Well, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and it is my delightful pleasure and honor to introduce another one of my friends, and he's going to be interviewed by me today. I always like to interview my friends. It's more like a conversation. Raymond O'Brien is, for those that haven't had the opportunity and the pleasure to hear one of his talks, watch one of his podcasts, or gone to an event where he's a speaker. I first met you, Ray, back 2019, I believe, in Philadelphia, right?
That's right. Yeah. First off, thank you for asking me, Bill. Hello to everyone out there in internet land. This has been a long time to hook up with Bill, and I've been really looking forward to this. And it was 2019. We had a great time, great 4 days with IANDS.
So we met in Philadelphia, and now we're doing this. I'm sitting in California. Sun has not even come up here where I'm at. And I'm talking to you, and you're outside of London someplace. You're how far out of London are you? You're out in
I'm from where I am, Bill, right in there's the city of London, where, from the old Roman city, and then there's London. So I'm 15 miles from the city of London. So I'm on a hill. When I look out in my garden, I can see the skyscrapers of East London. So yeah, it's a nice place to be.
Well, I've looked at photographs for the last few years from your yard. You seem that you have animals besides crows that are all around you.
I do.
And you got some kind of red fox that comes visit you all the time.
I have the fox, actually. There's a really good story to this, and it goes back 15 years from when I had my event of my cardiac arrests. I was in a really dark place, Bill, and I couldn't connect with anyone. As I've gone on over the time of the events, I've gained an awful lot of experience of how the body reacts to recovering from a cardiac arrest, particularly on a psychological level. I come from a family of seers. I don't often like to use the word healers, but that's what my granny was. And I've always had a connection with animals. And on this particular day, I felt really down. And I'm doing this interview with you, Bill, at the top of my garden in my sound room. And I walked down to the sound room one day to make this towards the house to make myself a cup of tea. And I heard this voice in my head say, "Turn around." And I turned around, I looked at the top of my roof on my sound room, and there was this one-eyed fox. She was really old, all scars on her. It was her right eye that was missing, nips in her ear. And something told me to say to her, "Do you want some food?" And she replied back. It blew me away. She said, "Yeah." So I said, "Come down to the house with me." And there's a dividing, my house is only 4 meters wide, Bill. So it was built in 1845, and it was the old railwayman cottages. So it's terraced houses there. So there's this brick wall, and I've looked at her, and she's walked all the way down the wall. So my garden's 150 feet long. Got to the house, and I remember thinking, my heart was racing, and I got down to the house, and I thought, how is she going to jump down off the wall, and what's going to happen after that? So I've opened up my back door, and I'm still thinking, I don't know what to give her. What do foxes eat? And I've gone into the kitchen. I've turned around, and she's sitting at the back door, Bill. And she must have had cubs. She still had her teats, but she looked really, really worn out. And it was her, actually, who kept me alive, amongst others. But from an animal viewpoint, it was her. I looked at her, one eye, really skinny, mange, but had the trust to sit in front of me. And I remember looking at her thinking, if you can carry on with all of your scars and losing your one eye, and still having pups, well, so can I. And so we had this relationship for getting on for almost 2 years. And over that period of time, I'd seen her she popped her head into my bedroom window. She's used to pop her head into the kitchen, never came in. But one day, Bill, she brought her son with her. And I called her Mr. B after my beautiful cow who saved my life. And so the two used to sit and wait for me. So I used to give them sausages, and I got lots of videos. So I found that was the prelude to the crows that come to visit, how they speak to me. And all of this has happened over the 15 years. It's been for those who may have seen my other videos, it was 15 years ago when I had my cardiac arrests. And to be warned about, to be told on a Wednesday that I was going to die, and then Sunday I died in an ambulance outside my house.
Let's start there. This is a good place to
Yes.
start, because people are going, what? Because you get their interest going. But you are one of the people that I've known that had the most deaths, like in a 24-hour period. You must have died, what, 10 times or something? Anyway.
I died. I was resuscitated. I can still remember. She's a beautiful lady. She ran the crash team. And the following day, I'll keep it brief, but she became and is a really beautiful friend of mine. She's one of my earth angels, and her very words were to me. I said, "How many times was I resuscitated?" She said, "You're a virgin on the miraculous, darling." She said, "We stopped counting at 5, but we think 9." I went, okay. I said, but you know, there is a lovely story where I had saved my cat's life from a dog next door who's savage. She's a lovely neighbor. And I remember beating the dog off with my hands, and the dog ran one way with lots of white fur around his muzzle. And Bill, my cat, who'd been with me for probably at that time about 19 years, so he's very old. He tore up the top of the garden, took him to the vets. He still survived. But I remember when I beat the dog off, and I got Bill back to the house, I remember pointing my finger at him going, "You owe me one, you owe me one." So when my event started, at about 11:45 at night, I was in bed, and bearing in mind I already had this warning on a Wednesday. So if people piece it together, my family were seers and healers. So I had seen already, I was running away from, I didn't want to be a seer. I didn't want to be a healer. All I wanted to do was do drugs and alcohol. I was hiding, I was running away. So I'm very specialized in addictions. I knew then, so Wednesday, spoke to Mum, told her that my soul had told me that I was going to die. And she knew, because she'd already forewarned me, if you don't change your ways, something bad's going to happen to you. She said, this is maybe 4 months. And I said, well, you know, some of the things that I've done, well, I've done some really bad things. I said, it'll have to be bad. And she went, it will be. And it was the way she said it. So I had the soul said, you're going to die. I got home, rang my mother, said I was going to die. She kept the conversation very short. Who told you? I said, the voice. Oh, that was the end of it. So Sunday night came. So bearing in mind, I've saved Bill's life. I'm lying in bed. I was very much, and still am as much as I can, into keeping fit. And I went to bed and I lay on my left side, and it was this, you know, Bill, it was this burning, stabbing feeling of like, what is, you know something's wrong, but you don't want to face the truth. And I got out of bed, and I did like 20 press-ups on the side of the bed, you know, and it must have opened, unbeknownst to me, opened the artery. I thought, I knew it was a muscle pain. And I went back to bed, turned on my left side again, but my heart must have stopped. But you know as well as I do that, you know, before, you know, just because your heart stops, you've still got maybe 20 seconds left of life within you. And so I put my feet on the side of the bed, and I remember my body going, you're in trouble. And I walked downstairs, and it was 11:45 at night. Bill used to sleep on the sofa downstairs, the couch. And as I came downstairs, I hit the front room light on, and he looked at me startled. And Bill, I could hear him just as I heard the fox. You look like you're in trouble, he said. And I remember distinctly going, I am in trouble, Bill. And I picked up, I had a cordless phone. And here in the UK, if you want to call paramedics or the ambulance, it's 999. And so I had this cordless phone in my hand, and I hit 2 9s. The next thing, I passed out on the floor. So I'm lying naked on the floor like this. I've got the phone in my hand, and the next thing that happens to me, I've smelt this. It was like smelling salts, and it's brought me round, and I had this rasp, you know, and it was Bill's tongue. So you know what a rasp that, you know, that cat's tongue has. And I remember lying on my side, like just like this, and his eyes right looking at me. and he's going, get up, and you're in trouble. You're in real trouble. And I'd looked at the phone, and I've remembered that I'd only hit 2 9s. I hit the last one, got through to the operator. She talked me through everything, and by this time, probably about 5 to 12 ish. Don't remember the exact times. But I left the front door open. I was so short of oxygen that I was having out-of-body experiences. I became one with everything. And I really mean that. I became one. Just everything on a subatomic level, atom level. I became it. I just blended into everything, and I could hear. I live in a small town. I could hear off in the distance the sirens, and so my front door's open. I'm panting really heavily. Bill's sitting next to me on the couch, and I've got my head down, and I've heard, "You look like you're in trouble." And I've looked up, and it was the 2 paramedics, male and female. They look like, our paramedics wear green. They look like green angels. I went, yeah, I'm really suffering. Let's get you to the ambulance. So I've hobbled out of the house, shut the door behind me, said goodbye to Bill, not knowing what's wrong with me. Got in the back of the ambulance. I've heard Rebecca say, "You need to breathe, Ray. You need to breathe, your oxygen." And this is the weird thing, Bill. My oxygen level, she told me, she put the thing on the end of my finger, "Your oxygen levels are down to 26%, Raymond. You have to breathe."
You weren't getting any.
Just literally like on the cusp, Bill.
Yeah.
She turned her back, and the driver, I can't remember his name, but Rebecca turned her back to me to do something. And I remember I was vomiting. It was just anyone out there who's ready for a heart attack. This is one of the symptoms, like nausea, like, stomach acid. They can obviously quite often be misdiagnosed. Omeprazole they may put you on, so bear that in mind. And but it's a warning to you. And so I was vomiting. They gave me the bowl. She turned her back to empty it, and I heard the ambulance start up. And the next thing, when she turned her back, I heard my soul say to me, "If ever there was a time to check out, now's the time to do it." And I consciously put my chin onto my shoulder, and the next thing, I was on the other side, Bill. Unbeknownst to me, I've had this heart disease virtually all my life. So I used to stop breathing in my sleep. One of my partners once said to me, "You freak me out at night because you stop breathing." She said, "And then you start again." But I managed to pin down the dreams that I used to have. And I met the very same people on the other side when I was in the back of the ambulance. And I met 2 men and 3 women. I was a tiny soul, maybe about 4.5 foot high. I was as naked as the day is long. I was sexless. I remember looking down at my feet, and the grass was like a real soft, the softest. It was like fur, Bill. It was like soft green cat fur. And I remember scrunching my toes in between it and thinking, I know where I am. I know where I am. And what I'd learned from this, Bill, and I still have a relationship with it, is the wind. The wind is the gatekeeper, and the wind went through me. It was such a warm feeling. I remember, it smelled of the most beautiful roses, Bill. The scent was incredible. Everything was vivid blue, and off in the distance, as I said, was 2 men, 3 women. And one of the women turned and looked at me. And I remember thinking, I wonder when I'm going to get my wings. And she smiled. Another woman turned her head. So all 3 are like looking at me. And one of the women said to the younger of the men, one looked like Santa Claus, grey beard. Everyone was dressed in white with veils. And she said, "Raymond's here." And as she said, "Raymond's here," I floated over to the guy, the youngest of the 2. And he looked at me. I looked at him. I looked at the guy who looked like Santa Claus. And I was now looking over his shoulder. He had a brown book. And for anyone who's interested in the rest of my story, the brown book is very important because I met this man in St. Thomas's Hospital when I was blue lighted there. So there's connection to that. It's a fabulous story. And he was just looking at this tanned leather book, and he didn't even look at me. he just went, he's not supposed to be here. He did that. And that's when I woke up in the back of the ambulance. And the paramedic was over me. And she was like looking really shocked. And the first thing I said, I propped myself up on my shoulder and I looked up at her and I said, I'm really sorry about that. And she was really startled. Why are you sorry? I said, I was just on the other side there. I said, she said, do you go on the other side a lot, Ray? I said, yeah, I do. I said, I come from, I don't know what's happened, Bill. I've just felt really guilty that I snuck off when I was in the back of the ambulance as a soul perspective. And I said, yes, I do. I come from a family of seers. If you park up, I'll make you a cup of tea and I'll tell you all about it. She went, no, Ray. And in our ambulances, you have a digital red clock, and it was right next to me on my left-hand side. She reached over and she flicked it. She said, you died at 12 o'clock. This clock went to 0 when you died. She went, and I've never seen that before. And she said, we're still outside your house. And I'm thinking they'll get up to speed in a minute. They've had something. They've maybe had a sniff of the gas in the back of the ambulance, and I'll be let out. It's all been a big mistake. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, we can't drive while we're resuscitating you. You died, Ray, and your eyes were in the back of your head. She said, so now we're going to go to A&E. And, we flicked off to A&E. It wasn't far from me. And I got bounced out the back of the ambulance. It would have made a great movie, because as I went down the corridors, I could see all the fluorescent lights going over me, and my brain was going, what on earth is going on? What's going on? And I got into the crash room, and that's where the crash team were waiting for me. Whew. We need your next of kin's telephone number, Raymond. Why? She said, we don't think you're going to make it. What? Hey, I'm looking at the clock, Bill. It's up on the wall right in front of me. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, my mum was very ill at the time. And so I remember distinctly saying to the lovely lady, my earth angel, please don't call her yet, because my mum's not well. And but only call her if I don't make it. She went, all right, okay. And I tell you what, it went from heaven, Bill, to probably one of the scariest moments of my life. The impact of it, losing control of bodily functions was probably one of the biggest, one of, not all, but that was a big thing for me. It took me a long time to get over that from a psychological recovery. They resuscitated me. Oh my gosh. I was waking up. I was waking up with my nose on the ceiling tiles. I woke up when I splashed back into my body. I woke up with 2 people on either limb, with me screaming at them, saying, what the effing hell do you think you're doing? And they're going, Ray, it's us. Gone again. Like we remember the old Hammer House horror movies where they're in the mortuary and the body comes up. I'm doing this, Bill. I'm pointing fingers at everyone. And when I finally came back, the last one was when I sat up and I pointed fingers at everyone, and I went, I really needed that. And I crashed back onto the gurney. And then they stopped working on me, wheeled me into the ICU unit. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning by this time. And it didn't stop there. The paramedic came back, the female, she came back with a friend, and I was on morphine by then. And I remember her walking towards me, and I heard her say to her friend, here he is, he's still alive. And I thought, this will be interesting. She came up to me, she said, do you know what? She said, of all the years I've been doing this work, you are probably one of the luckiest men. We can't understand that we were in the right place. We had everything for you. We can't believe. She said, you're actually well known in this hospital now because of the amount of times that you've come back. So I'm looking agog. I still don't even know what they're on about. And then one of the guys who was in the crash team, who, when I sat on my forehead, probably about the 3rd time that I died, I remember, because the body goes cold so quickly. I didn't figure on that, I was aware that I'd wet myself. I was aware that I was dying. I was absolutely. I just knew it. I had no thoughts of family. I love my family. No thoughts of, no connections, no fear of loss at all, other than the most fear that I've ever had. So there I was, sitting on my forehead as my soul, watching the crash team do what they had to do. And Barry, I think his name was Barry, he was to my left, and my soul looked at him, and he said to I think they're almost about to give up. He went, if this doesn't bring him round, nothing will. And I remember saying and looking at him, saying to my soul, saying to itself, he doesn't know that what he's about to do is really going to hurt me. And he used that defibrillator, Bill. And I'll tell you what, it's like I had the feeling of that for 18 months after. It's like I've been microwaved. And then so he said to me when he came to see me, he swore, he said, you are effing bizarre. He went, what happened last night? He went as like, he said, how do you feel? And you know, I just kept clicking the morphine, Bill, because, you know, my teeth were sore, my chest was like just, oh, in so much pain. And that was the change of Raymond O'Brien. That was the start. That was the start of everything. I remember coming back to cardiac rehab, and about 8 or 9 months later, and while I was in cardiac rehab, one of the cardiac sisters asked me, you know, what are you going to do now? You can't do your work anymore. My work was a mechanical and heating engineer and plumber. And it was the first time anyone had ever told me, you know, what am I going to do? Because I didn't realize that with the time that I was on the other side, my brain was starved of oxygen. So parts of my brain just doesn't work anymore. I blue screen really easily. And so I panicked, and I confessed that I was a registered healer with the NFSH, who have strong connections to Harry Edwards, and based out in Surrey. And a magical place for those who want to go. I said, I'm a registered healer, which allows me to work legally. I'm recognised by the National Health Service, and means I can work in hospitals. So I explained to her that briefly that I was a healer and I'm a seer. She asked me, what do I see? And I said all sorts of stuff. You know, I said I was out in California. I was out at the Circle Bar B Ranch working on some horses there, up in the mountains, and up at the Galita Mountains. Worked on 20 horses there. Just incredible results. So this is all pre-death. And so I explained to her that these are the things that I see. So she asked me outright, do I have cancer? Can you see if I have cancer? And I went through the protocols. I don't just blurt it out. I told her that, you know, I made sure, do you want to see it? And, you know, she was a very intelligent woman, very skilled at what she does. And so she said, yes, yeah, I want you to tell me. So when I do this sort of thing, I can still talk, but I'm aware that I'm in an altered state. And so it comes from within. So I asked her to turn around, so her back was to me. And I watched this hand come up, the right hand with the index finger, and it touched her just below her shoulder blade. And I went, it's here. I said, but it's asleep. So it's about the size of a mouse dropping. And I came out of my altered state, and she turned around, she looked at me, and she had this, I'll never forget her face, and I say this quite often, she had a real look of thunder. And I thought, my first train of thought was defense. Like, you know, I was about to say, well, you did ask. And she said, for your information, where your finger was I had a tumor on the back wall of my lung, and that's where they went in and cut it out. She said, but they couldn't get it all out. She said, so this is what I'm going to say to you. She said, it's not 3 millimeters, it's 1.2 millimeters, and it matters, Ray. He said, because it gets measured. Right, okay. So I left her at that, and then she hit me with it was a real I mean, if that wasn't enough to sort of trip me out, she went, would you like to work here? Like in the hospital that saved my life? And I said, yeah, because, you know, obviously I'm a registered healer, so I could. And she said, I'll have a word with the chemo unit here. She said, would you like to work, if you could, would you like to work on the chemo unit? I was ecstatic, Bill. So I went for the interview. You have a medical before you go, and before they took you on. So I had the interview. I had an incredible moment there as a seer. They said it'd be just like you and I now, Bill. It'd be a really informal talk, Ray. Meet the girls from the unit. If they like you, well, then, you know, they will introduce you onto the unit, onto the actual chemo unit. Right, okay. You can work out of the chapel. Wow. So I am sitting in this in almost like the coffee room, the rest room, and everyone's kind of looking at me and, you know, how you doing and that. He said, we can't start yet because we're waiting on another lady to turn up. She should be here soon. So this lady comes in. I'm at one end of the room. She's at the other. Quite a tall lady. She comes in. She went, oh, we've heard all about you. She said, we can't. So she'd heard from Sarah, because Sarah. So, I shouldn't have said her name. She had something removed, and but so she's told us all about you. She told that you have seen this, like, you know. And so yeah, do you see anything on me? And I thought, wow, talk about catch me out. I said, yeah, I do actually. So when I do this, and I quickly dropped into that altered state, I asked her, do you know what's wrong with you? She said, yes. She said, my question to you is, am I going to have a baby? Wow. I said, you'll have a boy. But at the moment, you've got a trouble with your left ovary. I said, it's inflamed. The room went quiet, and I thought, oh, this is the end of this job. And she said, I've just come from the fertility centre just now. She said, that's why I'm late. She said, and they told me that's exactly what is wrong with me. She said, to hear you say that I'm going to have a boy, and she did, Bill. She had a boy in the time of the 18 months that I was on the unit. You know, and I've seen cancer move from one to another. I've seen it. I've been spoken to by cancer. I'd actually seen yours in Philadelphia when I was talking to Jeff O'Driscoll, and there was another guy. You appeared out the corner of my eye. And I can tell you this now. I hope it's all right. If you don't, tell me to stop now. You was dressed in black. You had your black hat on, and we was in the foyer. I had the reception desk behind me, and I noticed you because you had something sitting on you. And what I'd noticed was that it was connected into your forearms, and it kind of was slouched over your head. It was really big, and I remember at the time thinking, Bill's got cancer. But it wasn't my place to tell you. I think you already would have known anyway, knowing you as I know you now, Bill. And so yes, I've been fascinated at every step that you've had with you know, always listening to you. I always see your posts, always have a look, like, you know, because I have that connection with you. But yeah, so that was the first time I'd seen that. So I've seen some remarkable things, remarkable things. I truly have. Manifesting, you know, all of the stuff that I had trouble with in the past are now part of my life. I think the biggest thing that people ask, you know, why don't I do a course, a teaching course? You know, why don't I do this? Why don't I do that? And I'm starting to think about a structure for that, you know, because I think I have enough information now to put that forward. I've since become a fully qualified counsellor who just deals with both sides, really, more like a, you know, from a spiritual viewpoint, but also from, because I know doctors don't really do woo-woo. They're like facts, don't they, at the end of the day? And that was one of the reasons why I chose to work on the chemo unit, because I didn't believe what I could do, Bill. And I knew if I worked on the chemo unit, if anyone's going to pick a hole in what I do, it's going to be on this chemo unit. And one of the nurses there, she's a lovely lady. She's given me permission to talk about her. Her name is Margaret. And I always used to look at Margaret, and non-stop, She would administer the chemo. Bill, the work that goes into preparing chemo is the responsibilities in just phenomenal. So I'd seen something on Margaret's legs, and I had sent myself an email, which I do now, and this email went right back to 2020. And Margaret contacted me, and she sent me a picture of her legs. Horrific, just literally holes, black holes in her legs, all the flesh necrosis, just eaten all off. And she asked me to come to her house, and I've got the pictures. And I had, before I got to her house, I remembered, you sent yourself an email about what's wrong with her, Ray. Like, dig them up, So I went to see Margaret 6 months ago. I get to her house, all bandages up. She's got the pictures, and I've told her I'd seen this, So she said, "Can you do anything?" So I touched. Just all I did was touch her, Bill. Just on her legs. And Margaret's a really down to earth person. Her husband is very down to earth as well. Very, very God fearing, very honest. And the next thing I hear, I'm in the kitchen. Her husband's making me a cup of tea because Margaret can't really move, and I've heard her say, "Oh, Ray," she went, the tingling feeling that I have in my legs. And then she sent me a beautiful message, and probably about, I messaged her this morning actually, because myself and 2 other people picked her up from the other side. So I dropped her this message. She's not replied yet. And her husband sent me a beautiful one back. "Don't stop what you're doing, Ray, because there has been an improvement." So I've checked in with her. So it's that kind of thing which I've become to accept. So to tie that in with dealing with the psychological issues of surviving a cardiac arrest, I'm really lucky. I've kind of got one foot in either world, and so yeah, it keeps me very grounded, Bill. So what's wonderful about doing this interview with you is that I know that you have an even bigger audience than I have. I'm very lucky. I have a lady in my life who is very skilled herself from a spiritual viewpoint, and is also a qualified counsellor. And so we've been going forward in this. So her drive is helping me to pick the ends up, really, and put them together just purely to help more people than I am at the moment. So I'm very lucky, and I think the message that I would sort of give out to anyone who's struggling with, kind of like an event that I've had, is that you give yourself time, but speak to the right people. That's, most of I'm not a well-read man, but I listen well. And throughout all of my life, the biggest thing that I've had is, and I got this from Peter Panagore actually. He called it the voice with a capital V, and I thought, I like that. I really like that, and I've never forgotten that. So I quite often say either the voice or my soul, but predominantly the voice with a capital V. So thank you, Peter. That has been a lifesaver, and it's been the listening. I found for me, it's not good to do too much reading. It dilutes what I'm being told. And, I think, and that's been my hardest thing, Bill, is listening. When people say, how do you do that? Will you train me? And when I go, well, it's all about listening. And it sounds so simplistic, but to actually identify that voice with the capital V has been something I've learned, that it doesn't matter what I do, whether it's making a cup of tea, don't leave that cup there, or I ride a motorcycle, don't take that route because something will happen. I don't question it now. I just don't take that route. So that is something which I'm trying to teach, the art of vulnerability, which enables people to go forward. Many of us don't like being vulnerable because we have fear of being hurt. So it is something that I've used a lot within my practice now. It is the art of being vulnerable. The benefits of being that way. So when clients do come and see us, that's one of the things that I bring into it, because it breaks down the barriers that allows people to come forward. And because I am a person who has had multiple addictions, from drugs to alcohol. I understand how we talk to ourselves, how we trick ourselves, why we don't want to get hurt, and you know, the positives of being vulnerable is kind of where I come. Once I know about a person, then I can start, you know, coming forward with that. So yeah, I'm very, very, very lucky, Bill. You know, again, just to be here having a gas with you.
Well, I was always fascinated when I first met you. First off, seeing you in person giving a talk is even more powerful. I mean, this is really powerful now. But if people have an opportunity to see you in person, when you were in Philadelphia, and it's like you melted into the audience, and then you crouched down and you got soft.
I remember.
And then people were listening, and then you got loud, and then there was a movement of joy and simplistic love that was flowing. And I think we're kind of the same cloth in a way, because I think both of us found that these intellectual approaches to the divine or to the spirit world or whatever you're exploring, it seems to be the child that's in us that finds the divine a lot easier. And I know you and I, especially you and I, because we hang around a lot of people that are super, their vocabulary in the spiritual world, they know all the scriptures, they know about this famous person, that, and they talk on. It's fascinating to listen to, but you know what? You and I are not that. If we tell you something, and I know from dealing with you, when you say something, it's just pure. And I want to apologize for a few years ago. Go on. Because you told me, you know, you're this intuitive, right? You know, and just off the top of it, I had my friend, she called Linda Smith, airline stewardess, right? And she called me just when I was talking on a video call like this, right? And she's on my cell phone, and I got the cell phone here, and then I put it on the video, and I go, I'm going to put you on the spot, Robert. I'm going to put you on the spot, Robert. And I said, what do you see? Yeah, no chance to warm up. You couldn't go in an altered state.
Oh no!
It was like, and then I go, you don't do that to people, because it's like somebody asked me something. I have to kind of set up, you know. It's like, well, give me a moment, and then you just go, okay. Well, you saw a problem with the chest. You pointed all different parts of the body where there's been damage done.
Yeah, particularly her legs, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, we won't go any deeper in that because it's all her own personal stuff. But she's sitting there. I'm looking at her face, and she's going, yeah. And then afterwards, did you tell him about me? I go, no, you didn't even know. Nothing, right? Anyway, so I felt like one of these guys with a dog and pony show. Hang on a second, let me show you my friend can do it. Let me show you the tricks he can do.
You did catch me out. You caught me out. And I was surprised. And you know, but to be honest with you, Bill, you know, on reflection, I'm glad you did it, because it brought out a side of me which I've never been able to, I've not done before, just like that. But you know, now on reflection, I do that. I do that a lot, and I didn't know that I do that, and it is as instant as that. It's
yeah, because when I did it, I thought it was part of me, because you know I do things on my own, you know, and I'm going, I've been uncomfortable having somebody, you know, put you on the spot. Hey, dude, you know, make a prediction, say something, you know, find the hitting object I put in the room, you know. So anyway, but that impressed me, because it was like, you could have just said, well, I'm not prepared, I'm not ready. You didn't. You just, it was like, okay, boom.
I enjoyed it, Bill.
I believe you told me a story a few years ago.
Yeah.
About horses. You were working with horses.
Oh yes. This is all pre-cardiac, pre-death, shall we say? Bearing in mind that I found it really difficult to come to terms with being a seer. I really struggled with that, hence the drugs and the alcohol. I thought I'd drown it out with all the drugs and alcohol. And I was asked to, how was I found? I can't remember the exact way, but I became a member of the Healing Trust. And my mentor was a lady who was very much into caring for horses. And so if the owners would go away, or they do pony swaps, all this kind of thing. And I think I had found, that was it. I'd wanted to become a member of the National Federation of Spiritual Healers. Its mentor was Harry Edwards, as I said, out in Surrey. Lovely, you know about this, the 23-acre. Just, and if you're going to do a gig there, Bill, I will see you there. We'll do lunch or something. I'd love that. I'd love to catch up with you. So they said, you know, you have to do 2 years of being mentoring by somebody who was a full member. For okay, right, we'll do that, and then there'd be a big test at the end and all that sort of stuff. Right, lovely, lovely. So I met this lady, and as I said, she was very much a horsey type, and she's asked me one day, "Do you do anything with horses?" Like, you know, I said, I'm a London boy. I don't get a lot of horses in London, like, you know. So she said,
motorcycles, but horses.
Yeah, lots of us to get around, Bill. So she said, would you like to come and see some horses? So yeah, okay. And she said, she had trained with Margaret Coates, another horsey lady, and so she knew what to look for, and she knew the signs from a horse who's receiving healing. And so I went to some stables out in deepest, darkest Kent, and the county of Kent, and was starting to see stuff, like, you know. So the horse would start talking to me, just like the foxes, which came later. And so I would start identifying stuff, and my hands would start touching the horse in places. And she'd go, yes, that's exactly what's wrong. You've got that right. You got this right. And she asked me one day, it was a big test. She said, I'd like you to come to another stable. So there's 5 horses there. Would you come and have a look at them for me? Yeah, I said, I'd love to. So I was very nervous. I was still like a newbie to it, and still on my probation for the NFSH, so on my best behaviour. And number 1 horse, I remember asking the horse, almost praying, Neil. I went to the said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to ask you, like, you know. So so all the owners of the 5 horses were all standing behind me, Bill, you know. And so I said, please tell me, like, you know. So as quick as a flash, just as it was with your friend, I dropped right into it, and I worked really quick, and I went here. It was like little flashes all over the horse, like, you know. I touched him here. I went all the way down the 4 horses, like, you know. They didn't say a word, nothing, absolutely nothing. These owners were just, it was almost as if they'd been turned off, like, you know, but they were like this and like that. And I'm like, I got to the last horse. He was called Sparky, and just beautiful show jumping horse, like, you know, travels the world, I'd found out. And they had said nothing about the previous 4 horses, so I don't know whether I've got them all right, Bill, or I've just like it's been like a plane crash, like, you know. So I'm in this last stable again. I'm a London boy. I'm not used to being around horses. I'm just not, like, you know. The great big feet with the steel boots on them. It's like woo. And the way they kind of turn and glide and look at me, so I found it really disconcerting. So I'm in the last stable. And I'm looking at Sparky, and I'm going, they haven't said the owners ain't said nothing about the last horses, like, you know. So if there's something wrong with you, can you please tell me what's wrong with you? And he went, I'm blind in my right eye. I've turned to this audience of these six people, and I've gone, I don't know what's wrong with Sparky. That's what it was. I said, I was honest. I said, I don't know what's wrong with Sparky, so I'm going to ask him. And that's when I asked him. I don't know, like, you know, and that's when he went, I'm blind in my right eye. And I said, but he's told me that he's blind in his right eye, you know. And the rest, it was like somebody cracked the ice of the silence, and they went. You know, we're amazed. You've been right on the 4 horses. She said, not only have you spotted what's wrong with them, but you've also picked out previous operations, previous injuries. He said, but you're not right with Sparky. There's nothing, you know, Sparky's just come back from wherever it was, like, you know, abroad. So, you know, he's a well-known show jumping horse. There's nothing wrong with him. Oh, right, okay. But the others, you know, we want you to work with our horses now. You know, you're amazing. And so I'm in New Zealand and in Auckland, catching a connecting flight to Singapore. And I've just come from California. In actual fact, I worked on some of the horses at that ranch, the Circle Bar B ranch, and up in the mountains. And I'm actually on the loo at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, you know, in Auckland Airport, and my phone goes bing, bing, and and it's the woman who's introduced me, you know, who's my mentor. Hi, Ray. Just thought you'd want to know that the owner of Sparky has contacted me, and they've had to take him to the optometrists because he's starting to bump into things, right? So they've taken him to the optometrist. He's got a detached retina, Bill, and he was blind in his right eye. But here's the strange thing. I only found the photograph the other day. He developed a white stripe that went across the eye, a horizontal white stripe. And but the horse recovered. They managed, you know, and off he went again. So the horses, when I was at this ranch, and actually, fact, the guy who owned the ranch was called Bill from Oklahoma. He called himself an old Okie, and Irish blood. When he found out, like, you know, you've got Irish blood in you, one of the women said, "So why are you here?" And I said, "Oh, I've come to see a guy called Roger Ford from Healing in America, who's based in Santa Barbara, and a Brit guy." And I thought, and then from there I went off to the Cook Islands, but that's again another story. And so I'm in these mountains, and one of the daughters of the owner says, "So why are you here?" So I've explained that I'm a seer, and I come to see Roger Ford from Healing in America, and she said, "Well, ask me the same question. So what do you do?" So I've mentioned about seeing horses. So she said, "Oh, we got horses here." "Oh, fabulous." She said, "Feel free to go to the corral and have a look at the horse." She said, "Go and find a guy called Mike." So I go out. Turns out Mike's Scottish, so he's the only Scottish cowboy I've ever met. Like, so I go to see him. He says, "How can I help you?" in this Scottish accent. I said, "I've been told you've got some horses here, and I've been, you know, some of them have got some issues with them. I just want to practice my art." And so he said, "Yeah, sure." So we're leaning on the fence and we're looking at all these speckled horses and that. And I said, "Do you know what's wrong with the horses?" He said, "Yeah, I know exactly what's wrong with the horses." And I said, "Can I go in and work on them?" He went, "Yeah." So I went in, I spoke to the horses, asked if I could do what I do. And it was a rush, Bill, like, you know, they all told me what was wrong with them. Came out of the corral. I said, "That one has got that one wrong with it. This, that one, this one." And he went all quiet. And I thought, "Oh, got it wrong." And he took his hat off, cowboy hat, and he slapped it against his thigh. And he called me boy, which irritated me. He went, "Boy, you've got to get out here." He said, "Because your skills," he went, "in the next valley is the guy who was a really famous horse healer. I can't remember his name now, but yeah, he brought a book out, like, you know, and they did a film, The Horse Whisperer, and he was in the next valley." He said, he's earning millions. And I remember distinctly saying to him, I'm not after the money. I don't need the money. I'm after the skills." He said, "You have to get out of here." He said, "You just have to get out." And anyway, from there, I went to Cook Islands, had my first heart attack in Rarotonga. And that was the start. And then 4 months later, bang, "You're not behaving, you're not listening, so we're going to have to make you feel." And boy, yeah, did I feel, Bill. So very, very, very unusual lifestyle. Some people come from, I've had a lady come from Japan. She came to my mother's house, and I didn't know what was wrong with her. She came into the house, and she had an interpreter with her, and was sitting at my mother's kitchen table, the very one that's now been made into a two guitars, and I could hear a body talk to me from underneath the table, and it said, it's my legs, it's my legs. I've got leukemia in my legs. And the woman's, you know, I worked on her, gave her pain relief, which is one of the things which I found I could do. When I worked on the chemo unit, that was one of the things that I was able to do. Was I remember sitting with one of the ladies who was pretty close to death, maybe about 5 or 6 weeks away, and she said to me, "When I sit next to you," she went, "my pain stops." She went, how do you do that?" I couldn't give an answer. But I'd get a lot of that. A lot of people would sit next to me. Another lady who I worked on, they'd asked me, I was sitting next to a lady in the chemo room, and the receptionist came up to me and said that we've got somebody upstairs who's terminally ill, but we can't give her any of her meds because she's just hysterical. It's like, you know, she just can't, you know, we have to give her the meds. You know. So we told her about you, and she would like to come and see you. Like, you know, I said, yeah, of course. So I said, well, I'll bring her into the chapel, like, you know, and it was all okay. It was all sorted out with the vicar. And the vicar was really cool with it. She liked what I did, and very supportive. And so she said, we'll bring her down in a few minutes, and she said, I'll give you a shout. So I wasn't long into it, Bill. I was maybe about 3 or 4 months into it, and the trust took an awful long time to build. A lot of the doctors were now accepting that this bloke's a bit different, you know, because, you know, the whole reason to go there was to have my metal tested, really. And I thought I couldn't get more honest feedback of being a seer than being here, you know, because they've been x-rayed, that they've been diagnosed, you know, so like, you know, it's a perfect place for me to practice my art. So the receptionist came out, she said, she's here, you know, and so I walked out to the reception, and there was this woman, Bill, in this wheelchair. I'd never seen anyone look so ill in all my days. She looked like a chicken that had been left in the oven, everything sunken in, different colour. And there was a big, tall man there. He had his hands on the handles, and he looked like a really proud bloke. And as I came to the reception, I got down, knelt down in front of her, and I looked up at her and I said, "I've been told that I'm supposed to see you." And she sort of, her head was slumped to one side. She went, "Yeah." So I took her into the chapel. And then from the chapel, I took her into another room where they put one of the, you know, the freezing skull caps on. So ladies can keep their hair. So I sat there, and bearing in mind she was hysterical, couldn't give her meds. She was with me, Bill, 15 minutes. Before I know it, she was asleep. And the thing that woke her up was one of the nurses. She came in. She wanted to see how things were going on, and she rattled the tray, and the woman woke up, and she said, "I've come here to give you your meds," and she said, "But I was asleep," and she said, "It must have been the morphine they gave me." This is what she said, and I looked at the nurse, and she mouthed to me, "We haven't given her any morphine," you know. So it was a really powerful moment, because after the nurse left, I looked at her, and she thanked me for what I just for being with her. Well, she said something to me which I've never forgotten. She went, I just want you to know that you don't think that they would leave you alone with me in a room if they didn't have absolute trust in what you do here." And it was like somebody had hit me around the head with a bat. And from that, probably that moment on, it was a revelation to work there. I'd sat in on you know, so privileged, sat in when a doctor had said to a woman, "I'm afraid," I couldn't believe the way he expressed it to her, "I'm afraid you have to go home and label up all of the stuff that you want to give away." And her husband couldn't be with us. He was so upset. So that's why I was with her. And we came out of that consultation room, and he'd given her like 4 weeks left, like, you know, and we're walking down this really long corridor, She just looked, and this is where I knew that it was right to do what I do. She was very frail by this time. And, she asked me, she went, Ray, she's like tiny, I looked down to her and yeah. She said, will I be able to drive in heaven? I remember looking at her and going, you'll get your wings in heaven. You don't have to drive, like, you know. And she said that if I had have heard that from anyone else, she went, I wouldn't have believed it. She said, but because I know it's come from you, she said, I get that. And then you know, by the time we knew it, we were in the lift upstairs, brought her back to her husband, and it was just one of those real kind of things, that feelings that just money don't buy, drugs don't touch, just pure Bill. And I know you know where I'm coming from with that. Just and it's been like that really ever since. You know, I'd love to get back to traveling, love to get back out to your country. You know, love to do more of what I really want to do. I love seeing clients, but I find that I love my clients, but I find I'm wasted with my clients. I need a bigger audience. I need to, and I've got this. It's almost a frustration within me. So it's nice to be going forward, doing stuff. You know, book and all that kind of stuff. You know, setting up the practice, which is going really well. But I still feel frustrated. I miss the traveling, Bill. That's the other bit of excitement. I love different countries. I love meeting different cultures. So yeah, life's been very good. I've been back to hospital. Had a bit of a turn the other day. Had an out-of-body experience Sunday, and you know, reminded me of my direction of journey. That's quite a remarkable sensation. Felt like I was going back home, you know, but no, I'm told there's still more to do. So yeah, I'm just really lucky, Bill. Just very, 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 very lucky. It's nice to give that.
We're all lucky. I'm lucky to have you as a friend. And
thank you, and likewise, Bill.
You know, it's kind of interesting how we live our lives and we run into certain people at certain times of our lives. Had we run into each other 25 years before we did, it wouldn't have been the same thing. We reached a point where our energies were more compatible and more in sync. And anyway, I appreciate you doing this with me, because there's a part of me that wants to say, hey, meet my friend. You know, I'm proud of you. I like what you're doing, and I'd like others to discover you. And you do need a greater audience, and someday you will. Your message is there. And
thank you, Bill.
Anyway, I love you, man. Is there some advice you'd like to kind of close on, or something you'd like to tell people?
Thank you. I think I would say, just listen to yourself above everything else. And if you don't know how to listen, drop me a line or drop Bill a line. It's like, you know, it's I use the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. And you know, so but if anyone needs a helping hand, they'll come to you, or you know, or maybe we'll hook up in the States. Who knows? I'd love that. I'd really love that.
Well, someday you'll be in California and we'll do something together.
I'd like that, Phil. All
right. Blessings to you. We're going to put down your website, your Facebook page, and your email so people can get a hold of you. We'll put that in the description down below.
Thank you, Bill.
And we're going to carry on this conversation after we end this official conversation. But thank you, and blessings to you, my friend. And
thank you, Bill. Thank you for those who are watching. Be well. Thank you.